All right, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and as part of the Rankin Technical College AWD 1000 Web Development Technologies course, I've been creating a series of video presentations that are based off of the Mozilla Developer Network Learn Web Development series. I am on the client-side JavaScript frameworks, and we're at the bottom of the React section talking about React resources. And as it says, this final article provides a list of resources to use as you go further on. All right. Although the to-do app that we did doesn't use this approach, it says many React applications define their styles on a per component basis rather than in a single monolithic style sheet. Create React app makes it possible to import CSS files into JavaScript modules, so that CSS is only sent to the user when the corresponding component is rendered. For this app, we could have, for example, written a dedicated form.css and then imported it as shown right there. As mentioned, this approach makes it easy to identify and manage modules. In other words, you put the CSS that's involved in one thing in its own file. But as it says, it also fragments your style sheet across your code base, and this fragmentation might not be worthwhile. But there's an article if you want to read more about it. We use console.log to check on the state and props of our application in this tutorial, and we've also used it for some warnings and error messages, but there's more we can do here. The React DevTools utility lets you inspect the internals of your React application directly in the browser. It adds a new panel to the browser's developer tools, and with it, as mentioned there, you can inspect the state and the props of various components and even edit them to make immediate changes. It's React DevTools, so it's like these DevTools that you've got right here. All right, where you can go in and make changes. It's very similar in function. On the left, it says we see all the components that make up the application, including some unique keys that are rendered from arrays. On the right, we see the props and the hooks that our app component utilizes. So notice too that the form filter button and to-dos are indented to the right. This indicates that app is their parent. In more complex applications, this is great for understanding parent-child relationships at a glance. And again, they've got more articles in here if you're interested. The Context API, the application that we built in this tutorial, utilized component props to pass data from its app component to its child components that needed it. Most of the time, props are an appropriate method for sharing data. However, for very complex, deeply nested applications, as mentioned here, they're not always the best. For that reason, React provides the Context API as another way to provide data to components that need it without passing props down the tree. All right. As mentioned there, there's also a use context hook that facilitates this. And they've got a link to yet another article if you're so interested. Class components, although this tutorial does not mention them, it is possible to build React components using ES6 classes, known as class components. Until the arrival of hooks, ES6 classes were the only way to bring state into components. They're still the only way to handle certain other edge case features and probably would be in there for more legacy types of apps also. The official React docs are a great place to start learning about them. For testing, Create React App provides some tools for testing your app out of the box. You may have deleted the relevant files earlier in the tutorial, which is what we did, but they were there. How's that? For routing, as mentioned, while routing is traditionally handled by a server and not an application on the user's computer, it is possible to configure a web app to read and update the browser's location and render certain UIs. This is known as client-side routing. The React community has produced two major libraries to handle client-side routing, those being React Router and Reach Router. React Router, as mentioned there, is well suited to applications with complex routing needs. Reach Router is well suited to simpler applications. Focus management is essential in client-side routing. Without it, keyboard users can be trapped in focus limbo. There's one caveat whatsoever. It says these projects that we're looking at here will be merged in the near future. When this happens, React Router will be the surviving project. And that's it. We've now gone through everything in React. Again, we're not going to cover Ember, Vue, Svelte, or Angular because we do not go over them at Rankin Technical College. So I've now covered getting started with the web, HTML structuring the web, CSS styling the web, JavaScript dynamic client-side scripting, web forms, working with user data, accessibility, making the web usable by everyone. And under the tools and testing, we did the client-side web development tools, the introduction to client-side frameworks. We did the React. Again, we're going to skip the Ember, the Vue, the Svelte, and the Angular. And the next thing I'm going to cover in here, see the list we've got left is getting smaller, is Git and GitHub. And we will be back for an overview of that in just a couple minutes.